My entitled father-in-law called me a deadbeat with no future, so I built a real estate empire and bought his properties when he went bankrupt. I, 28M, still remember the day I decided I'd had enough of my girlfriend's father treating me like I was beneath him. For context, I've been dating Emma, 27F, for almost 3 years. I grew up in a working-class family where I learned the value of hard work. No one handed me anything on a silver platter. I worked my way through college and landed a decent job that pays about $72,000 a year, not spectacular, but enough to live comfortably in our city. I was proud of what I'd accomplished on my own. Emma comes from serious money. Her dad, Richard, 59M, is a third-generation real estate developer who inherited his first properties from his father and has expanded significantly. He owns half a dozen apartment complexes and several commercial properties around the city. He makes sure everyone knows about his success at every opportunity. His wife, Susan, 56F, comes from money too, but she's much more down to earth and usually stays quiet during Richard's boasting sessions. For the past 3 years, I've tolerated Richard's condescending remarks about my career, my salary, and my apparent lack of ambition. At family gatherings, he would jokingly ask when I planned to get a real job or make comments about how I'd never be able to provide for Emma the way she was accustomed to living. I always brushed it off, thinking it wasn't worth creating drama over. Emma would tell me to ignore him, saying it was just his way of joking around. I tried to believe her. Last Sunday, everything changed. We were at their mansion for their weekly family dinner. Susan had prepared her famous roast beef, and everything seemed normal at first. Richard was talking about his newest development project, downtown, some luxury condos that were being built. The conversation shifted when he asked about my work, which he rarely showed genuine interest in. I mentioned a recent promotion and my new salary of $72,000. I was proud of this achievement as it represented a significant increase in recognition of my hard work. Richard scoffed and said that when he was my age, more than 30 years ago, he was already making 3 times that amount. He went on a long rant about how my generation lacks drive and ambition, how we waste money on trivial things like fancy coffee and avocado toast instead of investing the usual boomer talking points. But then he crossed a line. He looked me straight in the eyes and said that I was obviously comfortable being mediocre, that I was stagnant, and would always remain a nobody who would never own property in this city. He said I lacked the vision and work ethic to ever be successful. And the worst part? Emma sat there with a fake smile plastered on her face, letting out this weird, high-pitched laugh, as if her father had just told the funniest joke. Susan kept her eyes on her plate, not saying a word. Then I noticed something that made my blood boil. Richard gave Emma a small, knowing nod, and she nodded back. In that moment, I realized they had discussed me before my limited potential, my lack of ambition. I was the family joke. I kept my composure through the rest of dinner, thanked Susan for the meal, and left without causing a scene. Emma followed me outside, asking what was wrong. When I explained how I felt about her father's comments and her reaction to them, she told me I was overreacting and being too sensitive. According to her, I should just laugh it off because that's just how her dad is. I went straight to my best friend James's, 28M, apartment. James works in investment banking and has been trying to get me interested in investing for years, but I always preferred the security of my stable job. That night, my friend Claire, 30F, who runs her own successful business, joined us. We stayed up all night researching market trends, property values, and investment opportunities. By morning, we had drafted a comprehensive 5-year plan for me to achieve financial independence and property ownership. I felt energized and determined like never before. The next day, I met Emma for coffee and ended our relationship. She was completely blindsided and couldn't understand why I would throw away 3 years over one little joke. I told her it wasn't one joke. It was a pattern of disrespect that she enabled and participated in. I specifically pointed out her fake laugh during her father's tirade and how it showed she didn't respect me either. She got defensive and asked if she wasn't allowed to laugh at a joke anymore. I calmly told her she was free to laugh at whatever she wanted, but she wouldn't be laughing at me anymore. That was 3 years ago. I just finished setting up my property management dashboard for my growing portfolio when I noticed that Richard had tried to connect with me on LinkedIn 4th time this month. The irony wasn't lost on me. Update 1. I've been blown away by all the support from my original post. Reading your comments gave me even more motivation to stick to my plan. A lot has happened in the past 5 months, and I wanted to share some updates. The day after I posted, something unexpected happened. I received a text from an unknown number. It was Richard, suggesting we meet to discuss potential opportunities and saying that we perhaps got off on the wrong foot. I couldn't help but laugh at the audacity from calling me a nobody to suddenly wanting to collaborate. I didn't respond. My original 5-year plan has accelerated significantly due to some unexpected market shifts and opportunities. What was supposed to be a 5-year journey became a 2-year sprint. I moved into a tiny studio apartment to minimize my living expenses and saved aggressively. James constantly warned me about burnout, but I was too driven to slow down. Within 6 months of creating my plan, I purchased my first property, a small fixer-upper in an up-and-coming neighborhood. I learned everything I could about renovation from YouTube and called in favors from friends who had skills in carpentry, plumbing, and electrical work. Claire helped me design the interior on a tight budget, and we managed to transform the place while keeping costs low. About 3 months later, the market took a significant dip. While most investors panicked, I saw an opportunity. There was a duplex I had been eyeing for a while, and the owner was desperate to sell after losing his job. I managed to purchase it for about 20% below market value. James helped me build my credit to secure the loan, and suddenly I owned 2 properties. Around this time, I started hearing whispers about Richard's business troubles. Apparently, his latest development was facing serious issues: contractor disputes, permit delays, funding problems. I tried not to pay attention to the gossip, but it's hard in a relatively small city where real estate circles are tight-knit. Last week, something truly unexpected happened. Emma showed up at my office unannounced. She looked me up and down, commented on how good I looked, and tried to make small talk about mutual friends. After awkward pleasantries, she finally revealed the real reason for her visit. She started talking about her father's amazing new development project and how it was going to revolutionize the downtown area. Then came the pitch. Would I be interested in investing? The irony was too much. I pointed out that it was odd to be asked to invest by the same people who had called me a nobody with no future just a couple of years ago. Emma claimed that her father had changed, that he now respected what I had accomplished, and that he spoke highly of my business acumen. I highly doubted that. I told her that I had built my modest success without Richard's help, and I intended to continue that way. Then Emma shifted tactics. She hinted that my investment could be the beginning of a fresh start for her, not just professionally, but personally as well. I realized that nothing had changed. She still saw me as a means to an end, a tool to gain her father's approval. I declined her offer and politely asked her not to come to my office again. Just last month, I closed on my 3rd property, a small commercial space that needed significant renovation but had excellent potential due to its location. Unlike Richard, who seemed to chase after prestige projects regardless of their financial viability, I focused on manageable properties that fit within my strategy. James has expressed concern about my pace, saying I'm working too hard and not enjoying life enough. But the truth is, I find deep satisfaction in what I'm building. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about proving to myself what I'm capable of. Yesterday, Richard texted me again. This time, he mentioned having a proposition with serious money involved and asked me to call him. I showed the message to Claire, who just shook her head and said something about how people only reach out when they need something. Richard sent 3 more increasingly urgent texts today. I ran into Emma at a coffee shop 2 days ago. She was arguing with someone on the phone about rent payments, looking stressed. When she noticed me, our eyes met briefly, and I saw something like regret in her expression before she hurried out. I didn't feel the vindication I might have expected. Instead, I felt peace, recognizing that I was playing an entirely different game now. Update 2. The local news ran a story yesterday with the headline, "Prominent local developer faces multiple lawsuits." I knew immediately who they were talking about. Richard's latest development project had completely fallen apart, with investors suing for mismanagement and breach of contract. The article mentioned rumors of financial irregularities and possible bankruptcy. 2 days later, I was surprised when Susan asked to meet me for coffee. She looked years older than when I last saw her, with dark circles under her eyes and a weary expression. She told me she had left Richard after 32 years of marriage. Susan explained that Richard had been hiding their financial troubles for months. His company had been hemorrhaging money due to a series of poor investments and risky deals. The worst part was that he had mortgaged their family home without telling her, putting everything they owned at risk. She had only discovered the truth when the bank sent a foreclosure notice. She also mentioned that Emma had been forced to move out of her luxury apartment and into a tiny studio because Richard could no longer subsidize her lifestyle. According to Susan, Richard kept talking about me, saying he saw it coming and that's why he wanted to partner with me. I clarified that I left because I wanted self-respect, not because I had any clue about what would happen to his business. Before leaving, Susan apologized for staying silent during that fateful dinner. She admitted she had enabled Richard's behavior for decades, and it had cost her not just her marriage, but her self-respect. The day after meeting Susan, Emma started texting me. At first, it was just casual messages asking how I was doing. Then she started sending screenshots of past due notices and asking me questions about rental applications. Her messages became increasingly desperate, culminating in direct requests for financial help. I showed James the texts, and he made a comment about karma being a powerful force. Last weekend, I attended my cousin's wedding and was surprised to see Emma there as someone's plus one. During the reception, I overheard her crying in the bathroom, telling someone about her situation, how she had to sell her designer clothes and bags just to make rent, how humiliating it was to apply for basic jobs with no meaningful work experience. Later in the evening, she approached me at the bar. Her eyes were red from crying, and she seemed genuinely humbled. She told me she finally understood how it felt to be looked down on, to have people assume you're worth less because of your financial situation. Despite everything, I didn't feel triumphant seeing her struggles. It just felt sad. 3 days ago, Richard showed up at my office looking terrible unshaven, wearing clothes that hadn't been pressed, with dark circles under his eyes. He started pitching me on yet another development scheme, claiming it was a guaranteed return and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When I asked why he thought I would invest with him after everything that had happened, he broke down. Through tears, he admitted that he didn't know how to be a nobody. His entire identity was wrapped up in being successful, in being someone people respected and envied. Now that it was gone, he didn't know who he was anymore. Looking at this broken man, I felt a wave of realization wash over me. I didn't want this for him or anyone. Instead of turning him away, I spent 2 hours helping him create a realistic budget and a plan to downsize his lifestyle. I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it for myself to prove I wasn't the person he thought I was. Later that evening, I received a text from Susan thanking me for helping Richard, saying it was more than he deserved and more than she would have done in my position. Update 3. I learned an important lesson about people like Richard. They never really change. The budget I helped him create was supposed to be a tool for him to get his finances under control and live within his means. Instead, he was using it as a presentation to lure new investors, claiming I was his financial advisor and using my name to add credibility to his schemes. Any sympathy I had left for him vanished when I found out. A week after discovering Richard's latest deception, I received a package from Susan's lawyer. Inside were detailed records of all of Richard's property deals for the past decade, including several that appeared fraudulent. Susan's note explained that she was doing what she should have done years ago, standing up for what was right. James and I spent days analyzing the documents, uncovering a complex web of shell companies, misleading contracts, and deceived investors. The most shocking discovery was that Emma's new apartment building was actually one of Richard's hidden assets. He was collecting her rent payments through a shell company while claiming bankruptcy to avoid paying his debts. I made 3 phone calls that day, one to my lawyer, one to the state investigator's office, and one to a top real estate agency. By the end of the week, I had submitted an offer to buy Richard's entire portfolio of distressed properties at a significantly reduced price, including the building where Emma lived. Richard showed up at my office the next day, furious about my offer. I calmly explained that I knew about his fraudulent activities and that the state investigators were already building a case. I told him he had 2 choices: accept my offer and walk away, or face the full legal consequences of his actions. He deflated completely, asking what I wanted from him. I told him I wanted 3 things: for him to sign over all property rights legally and cleanly, to leave town, and to never contact me again. When he asked what would happen if he refused, I showed him copies of the documents that would go to every investor, bank, and law enforcement agency in the state if he didn't comply. He signed everything that day. The next morning, Emma burst into my office, angry about her apartment building. When I explained that her father had been collecting her rent payments while claiming poverty, she went pale. I showed her the paperwork proving her father's deception. When she asked what would happen next, I told her she could either continue renting from me transparently or move out. It was her choice. Last week, I finalized the purchase of Richard's properties, effectively doubling my holdings overnight. The state investigation into his business practices continues, but my lawyer has assured me that my purchases are clean and legitimate. Yesterday, I received an email from Emma. She's moving out of state for a job opportunity and wanted to let me know she finally understood what real strength looked like. She thanked me for inadvertently teaching her that lesson. I didn't respond. Susan sent a simple text thanking me for bringing the situation to a close and giving her the freedom to start over. Today, the first officially launched my own property investment firm with James as my partner and Claire handling our renovation projects. We've made a commitment to ethical, transparent, and legal business practices, the opposite of how Richard operated. In real estate circles, Richard's name has become toxic. No one will work with him, and he's reportedly moved to a small town several states away. I've realized that true revenge isn't about watching your enemy fall. It's about becoming so powerful that their failure becomes nothing more than a business opportunity for you. My phone buzzes occasionally with messages from Emma or Richard, but I no longer feel the need to check them. They're no longer relevant to my story.